Phil sits hunched over his computer, his face illuminated by the screen's glow. His bloodshot eyes reflect the numbers on the screen, his dwindling bank account. Empty whiskey bottles litter the floor. Phil was now in his late 40s, and he'd become one of those pimps slinging ads by day and day trading at night. He tried to keep out of his dad's criminal enterprise, but he couldn't keep his nose clean. But something he thought was a far-gone nightmare was pulling him back in. He reaches for his phone. It's Fred. He's the last person in the world he wants to talk to right now, but he needs his help. The flickering neon sign outside cast a lurid glow across the dingy motel room, painting the scene in shades of sickly green and lurid pink. Phil's world crumbled around him, the threadbare carpet seeming to tilt and sway beneath his unsteady feet. The woman, her name lost in the haze of the previous night, lay sprawled on the floor, her once vibrant skin now an eerie canvas of blue-white. His familiar Saturday ritual of drugs and sex, their shared dance with oblivion, had become a desperate act of Sunday morning revival. He tried to save her, his hands shaking as he fumbled with the Narcan kit. But the needle hung limp in her arm, the blood refusing to flow. Phil sank to his knees, the stench of stale cigarettes and cheap air freshener filling his nostrils. His stomach churned, a wave of nausea rising in his throat. He had seen death before, had even been its harbinger, but this was different. This was intimate, brutal, and utterly senseless. How had he ended up here, in this rundown motel, surrounded by the waste of addiction and despair? His life, once filled with promise and potential, had spiraled into a chaotic mess of bad decisions and fleeting escapes. The housing market crash had stripped him of his wealth, his McMansion reduced to a foreclosure notice. His job, his status, his carefully constructed identity were all about to vanish like a mirage in the unforgiving desert. Phil thought to himself,
"There's a color just before death that is luminescent. It's between the blue fading veins, completely deficient of oxygen, and the pure white of death. The day before my mother died, she shone with this color of purity and absolute peace."
Phil would never know that peace again in his lifetime, and now he was about to find out why. His mind raced as he reached for her ID. Charlemagne was the name she had danced under, but who was she really? But Phil knew how to compartmentalize. He learned it from his dad. For now, he'd have to try and forget this day and move on.